Hey everybody! Welcome back to Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda and I'm glad that you could join me today. Today we're going to talk about somebody who is really rather important to the Christian faith. Today we're going to talk about Jesus. And we're going to talk particularly about Jesus in Christianity and Jesus in Islam, because Jesus exists in both. However, between the two, the story of his birth is different. What he did was different. The reason he was sent was different. How he died was different. So how they relate to him is different. So in understanding our differences, we better understand what we each believe. So let's explore that man named Jesus, okay? So we're going to start with Christianity. And in the Christian denominations, they view Jesus as part of the Trinity. So Trinity is God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And they essentially believe that those three are different versions of God, that it's all one, but they're different ways to relate to it. So they view that Jesus is really God in human form. So it's more easy to relate to. They also believe that Jesus is the incarnation of God. So God came down. They believe that Jesus is part of God. And that has been the case through his whole life story. For example, in the birth story in Christianity, Jesus is born by a virgin. A virgin, she was not married. Her name was Mary. She was not married. She claimed she was a virgin. She never had intercourse with anybody. She was engaged to this man named Joseph, and Joseph didn't have anything to do about it. And she was approached by this angel, the angel Gabriel, and the angel Gabriel said, "Don't be afraid. You're going to have this baby." And she freaked out. She's like, "Well, how can I have a baby? I'm a virgin. I've never had relations with a man. Like, you got to have the wrong person." And essentially the angel Gabriel calmed them down, and they conceived through the Holy Spirit Jesus. Okay, so now Mary goes back to Joseph and says, "So I'm pregnant." And Joseph basically says, "Yes, I know," because an angel also came to him and said, "Don't be afraid. Mary has conceived. Mary has the fruit of the Spirit in her womb, and she's going to bring this, and you're going to name him Jesus." And so they basically say, "Okay," and they're going to go and kind of pass it along. And they don't get married. They don't try to cover it up. They let Mary be the Virgin Mary, and Joseph is Jesus's earthly father. They go through, in the birth story, they are sent to a different place because there is a census that needs to be taken so that they could figure out how many people there were in the different tribes at that time. So they had to relocate, and when they got there were no room at any of the inns, so Mary gave birth in the stable, which is essentially like a barn. And that's supposed to represent the humbleness of Jesus's birth. And it was such a miraculous thing that shepherds came to see him because they were told by angels. Wise men, like rulers, came to see him because they were told by angels. And all these different people came to see this baby that was born in a barn. And it was a very magical, mystical, special time. And they believe because of the birth story, like that was just the start. Now in Christianity, they don't have a whole bunch about his upbringing. They have a time where he was in a temple and he was on a trip essentially with his parents. He was left behind, and they didn't notice until they were a couple of miles away. And he basically said, "Why were you complaining? Why were you scared? I was in my father's house. Shouldn't you have known that?" They went back to get him. Fine. And then he kind of continues on. We don't know anything about his life besides that he's a carpenter because his earthly father, Joseph, was a carpenter. And then he gets baptized and all these miraculous things start to happen. When he's baptized, a dove comes down and there's this voice that says, "This is my son with whom I am well pleased." He makes people who are blind see again. He makes people who have leprosy, a disease on the skin, be healed. He makes people who are dead alive again. Like, there are all these miracles that he does throughout his life. And every time he does a miracle, more and more people are drawn to him and they want to learn from him and they believe that he can do all these great things. And as he's going along, he's teaching different lessons. He's saying, depending on which version that you're looking at, he's saying, nobody can get to the Father except through me. He's saying, you need to come to me so you can get the peace and you can live forever in heaven, in the kingdom of heaven. All different ways. In Christianity, after he does all these miracles, because he is so persecuted and people don't like what he's saying, he is condemned and put on trial. He is crucified after being tortured on a cross with nails in his hands and his feet. And he gets stabbed in the side with a knife. And he essentially dies, according to Christianity, for the sins of the world. He gives up his life. God gives up his son because he loves the world so much. Then the miracle in Christianity is after Jesus is dead, they put him in this tomb, and on Easter, which is why it's a big deal in Christianity, he raises from the dead. Even death can't hold him. He's so beyond the human form that even death can't control him. And that's the miracle that Christians focus on. He raised from the dead. He is clearly more than any human because he can do things that humans can't do. So they believe that after he was raised, he came and he walked around. He kind of told the story to his disciples, which were like his closest friends. And then they believe he ascended to heaven. And that's where he sits. He sits on the right hand of the Father, and he rules and judges over all with God the Father. That's the Christian version of Jesus. He came, he did amazing things, he suffered, he died, he rose again. That's Christian Jesus. Okay? Now, in Islam, Jesus is typically referred to by the name Isa. And he is not the Son of God, but rather he's a heavenly messenger. They believe he was sent by God, not the Son of God. Okay? They believe that he performed many miracles, just like the Christians do. They believe that he will return to earth at the end of times to restore justice and defeat the false Messiah, which is also known as the Antichrist. That's different than Christianity, because Christians believe he has already rose and then he rose to heaven. So that's a difference, okay? To confirm again, Islam, Jesus is not the Son of God. He's a prophet. He's a messenger from God, okay? And when the messengers came from God, Islam believes that the messengers were trying to get people back to God, back to focusing on God. So that's what Islam believes, okay? Now, Islam differs on the death story. They believe in Islam that Jesus never died. They believe that, yes, Jesus was on the cross. However, Jesus was elevated by Allah. He went to a new level. He transcended. Thus, he was not killed on the cross. He was saved by Allah. So because he was saved, he never really died. And because he never really died, he can't be resurrected. in Islam. Are you following me? That's why they say when it's the end of times, then he'll come back and he'll fix everything. Okay, so the birth story was intriguing to me. It was intriguing to me because I, again, spent 40 years of my life in Christianity, so that birth story of Jesus is the only one I knew. The Islamic birth story has some similarities, but there are specific differences. Okay, so let's talk about the birth story a little bit. So in Islam, they believe that Mary had withdrawn from her family. She went to a different place all by herself. When she went to that different place, then God, or Allah, sent the Holy Spirit. They call it the Our Spirit, also known as the angel Gabriel. They sent him to bring about a pure boy to Mary. And basically the angel Gabriel breathed this pure boy into existence. So they don't believe Jesus is God's son. He comes from the Holy Spirit, the angel Gabriel, whatever you want to call it. So different lineage, okay? Once she was conceived with this pure boy, she continued to withdraw farther. She didn't go back to her family right away, okay? She was struggling with, oh my gosh, there's this baby inside of me. I don't know what's going on. And apparently in the Islam story, miracles from Jesus started before he was even born. So at one point, while she was so much fretting about everything, Jesus spoke to her from her womb, and he called out and saying, grieve not, thy Lord has placed a mullet beneath you. Basically saying like, it's okay, I'm special, it's okay, you'll be protected. Coming from her womb. Blew my mind. I had never heard that before. Okay? Then she was walking back and she came to start giving birth. And she actually gave birth underneath a date tree. So she was birthing all by herself, had nobody to help her. She had this baby. She then brought the baby back to her family that she had been withdrawn from for all those 9 months. If it took 9 months, I'm not certain. That's what a normal labor takes, or a normal pregnancy takes, I should say. After the baby was brought back to the family rejoiced in seeing her, which indicates to me that they kind of had some knowledge that this baby was special. I did not read in the Quran any place that said like an angel came, but I could have missed it. I could have misunderstood it. Don't shoot me, please. Okay, so there's the family coming back. They're very, very excited that Mary came back, and they're like, oh, Mary, thou hast brought amazing things, and they can't wait to talk and see all these amazing things. But they say, how shall we speak to one who is yet a child in a cradle? And Jesus basically pipes up and says, oh, don't worry, I'm special, I can handle this. So in an infant state, Jesus again speaks. He's again performing miracles. Okay? And Jesus says, truly I am a servant of God. He has given me the book and made me a prophet. And then he continues to say a couple other things. And this is a baby. So if that happened, like, holy cow, can you imagine how shaken you would be if you were seeing your niece or nephew and all of a sudden, you know, they're, I don't know, 2 weeks, 2 months old, they start talking to you in full-on sentences? Mind blown, right? So different versions of Jesus, and they're very intriguing to me. I love learning more about what people think about Jesus, how that person interacted, what their deity was, what was their purpose here. And it was just awesome. It was awesome to learn. Can't wait to learn more. And I hope you'll join me next time. Bye-bye.